What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the video here on the World of Juice channel, and welcome to a special new series. I have been wanting to do this for a while, and I actually made this entire roster myself, at least the team that we're going to be using today. So I'm very excited about it. I put a lot of work into this roster. I think that it's going to be a fun little series. Now, basically, what it's all about, you already know kind of the theme and the idea because of the thumbnail and the picture, or in the title of the video, but basically, over the years here on YouTube, I have done different little series about this topic. I've always been fascinated with NFL draft busts and turning their careers around and making them changing their career, making them go from a draft bust to a Super Bowl champion, MVP, X Factor, all that kind of stuff, making them totally different, a different career path than actually what happened. And I've done different series on that. I even had a series titled the Revival series where I did that specifically in each video. So I was thinking, how can I incorporate that into Madden 26 and into the current landscape of what my channel's got going on? And so I kept thinking, how do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? Where do I want to put it? Who do I want involved in it? What's the roster going to look like? All that kind of stuff. And then I came to the idea that I'm going to create an entire team of NFL draft busts. And these guys range from former first round picks that have failed, that never really did anything, guys that had promising college careers, but maybe got drafted in the first round and never came out of anything, number one overall picks that didn't do anything, that didn't live up to the hype, obviously. And also guys that maybe had promising futures, but injuries maybe happened. And that also leads to their draft bust status. Or possibly life stuff happens and they become draft bust. There's a lot of different things that lead up to being you being labeled a draft bust. The most common one obviously is you get drafted really high, most likely the first round, and then you don't do anything with that. You suck, or you can't live up to the hype and you're gone out of the league within a couple of years and you don't get a second contract. So that's kind of the criteria that I was working with. And I didn't pick a lot. I picked some of the mainstay guys, but I tried to stay away. Like, we don't have Jamarcus Russell on this team because I've done that in the past. I've had Jamarcus Russell as a focus of a draft because he's like one of the most famous draft busts of modern times. So I decided to stay a little bit away from him. He might come in the future of this series, if how depending on how long it goes, but as of right now, he's not on this roster. So I'm excited. Like I said, I created this roster myself. I created all the players. Now, not everybody is a created player. There are some actual real life people that are still playing in the league that are on this roster, but they are kind of considered draft busts. And every position's different with the way that you consider it a draft bust. You kind of have to factor in the way the position works and how high some of these players can get drafted at these certain positions. Like offensive linemen obviously can go high in the draft, so they're different than like I don't know, like a tight end or a corner or a defensive lineman or linebacker. Like, all these positions get drafted differently, so they have different expectations and they have different criteria that kind of would consider them a draft bust. Most of these guys, I think you would agree with me on being draft busts, mainly because I did a lot of research on who some of the top draft busts are, other than my like just regular knowledge on who's a draft bust. But I did some different research. I did some digging, trying to figure out who the world kind of considers as a general consensus a big draft bust. And I kind of compiled a different list of certain players at certain positions, and some positions were harder than others to find information on, like offensive line. And so I went through and I put together a roster of about, I don't know, maybe 60 guys, I think, that I put on the team. And obviously, some of them are on the practice squad that we'll go over. But I probably created maybe 30 guys, 35 guys, maybe 40. I don't know. I created a lot of guys for this roster. I may upload this roster to the community share so you guys can have it too. Although the only reason I wouldn't consider doing that is because I couldn't complete the roster in the main menu, like the main roster screen. I had to complete the roster in franchise mode because when I was building the roster at the very start, I did something stupid, which was I released all of the because we're going to be using the Vegas Raiders in this. And so when I was creating the roster initially, I released like Brock Bowers and all of the top Raider players, not realizing that for some reason in Madden, when you release those guys, you still incur their penalties from their contracts. So when I started to like sign the guys that I wanted to put on the roster that weren't created, it ended up not working because the Raiders had like negative $700 million because I had cut all these players and their contract penalties had like doubled and have added on. They've been totaled up into this massive negative cap room that I had, which I still think is a super stupid thing to have in a created roster on a main menu. Like I get having the cap and obviously everything like that in the franchise mode, but having that in the main menu for when you're just creating a regular roster for offline, like why do we need salary cap? Why does that have to be a factor in making a roster? If I want to put Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen all on the same team, and then have the most expensive player at each position on the same team in a online or an offline roster that I create just for fun, then you should let me do that. But anyway, so I screwed that up. That was my fault initially. I had forgotten about the money and I should not have released everybody at the very beginning. I should have done it in segments so it wouldn't have been so bad. So that's the only reason that I wouldn't upload it because it's not technically complete. I had to complete it in the franchise, and I don't really want people to do that in their own have to do that in their own because there's a lot of guys that I released into free agency that I added onto the roster once I got into the franchise. So it's a little bit of a hassle. It's kind of annoying, so I don't really want people to have to go through that. But if you guys really want me to upload the roster, then I certainly will. But anyway, the basic premise of this series is we are going to do it kind of similarly to the St. Louis Blues from last year, where we did about a half a year each video, and we jumped in and played a few games, played the moments for each game for some games, and basically split it up into a half a year chunk per video to get through more seasons. That's kind of how we formatted the St. Louis Blues series last year, and that's I think how I'm going to formulate format this series for the Draft Bus, because I think mainly getting through more seasons allows us to see the development of these Draft Busts and possibly turn them into gives us a better chance to see them actually turn into good players. And it also allows us to possibly add different busts in future. Now, the way that I would do that is I would probably not draft anybody, but in every preseason, I would go through and maybe add like one or two guys that are also on my list of guys that I compiled and bring them in as pseudo draft picks, but obviously they're busts, so they're still going to be bad. But that way we'd still get some new talent every year, and it wouldn't just be reliant on the same 60 guys I added or 53 guys that I have on the roster. So that would be kind of a way to bring an influx of new faces, an influx of new talent, and still have it be draft bus instead of because if we have a whole team of draft bus and then we go to the draft and draft the number one overall player, that's not a draft bus. He can't be on the team. So it doesn't really work that way. So what I would probably do is every preseason I would do something like that. So I know this is a lot of rambling, a lot of yapping, but I just felt like I had to explain everything right now so that you guys knew going in what this series is kind of all about. So now finally we can get into the video and I can go through the roster. This episode's not going to have any of the season simulation yet because I just want this to focus on who's on the team and what their ratings look like and everything about them being created and all that kind of stuff. And then next episode, we can do the first half of season 1 and all that kind of stuff. And then we can get going. So if you're going to enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, join the Juice Club. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers. So if you want to help me get to that mark, make sure you hit that button, that subscribe button, and join the Juice Club. But it's time finally to do the Draft Bus series. I don't know what I'm calling it officially. You probably already know what I called it because you already know what the title is. But as of right now, I don't know what I'm calling it. So whatever I end up calling it, that's what it is. The Raider Draft Bust or something. It's time. If you're going to enjoy, again, hit that like button. It would really help me out. Leave a comment about anything you think about this series. If I left a player off that you might want to see in the future, or if you think the ratings are good, or maybe somebody's a little bit too high of a rating. I don't know. I try to be pretty reasonable with my ratings considering their draft bust. They should be pretty low overall, but again, some of these players actually had promising beginnings of their career, so I kind of made them a little bit higher of an overall than they otherwise would be than the rest of the team, I guess. But I didn't go like too crazy. Nobody's over an 85, basically. Nobody's over an 84, I don't think. Nobody's over an 83. I think there might be an 82, maybe an 81 every once in a while, but there's like nobody crazy good overalls. No good dev traits except there's a couple of real life people that have star dev. So we'll go from there. Let's get into it and see what you think. So this is the roster, and you may be noticing at the top right of the screen, I am using John Madden. I wasn't planning on using John Madden, but when I was going to create my coach, I noticed that EA Sports had added in another section where it said instead of like using a real life coach or creating your own coach, you can play as John Madden. I was like, that's new. I haven't seen that, so I wanted to use it. And I think, you know what? It works out perfectly because not only are we the Raiders, which is the team that John Madden coached back in the day, it also kind of works because John Madden's this kind of ultimate motivator guy. He's this ultimate team build type of guy. He won a Super Bowl back in the 70s. He's that type of guy that he's like the perfect coach to fit. The other guy that I would choose is probably like John Gruden. He's this type of guy that I think the perfect coach for a team of busts would be a guy as strong as John Madden, as strong of a personality, as strong as a coaching mind as John Madden had. I think he fits perfectly. I wasn't planning. I was just going to make like another version of Coach Juice. But when I saw that they added in that John Madden section where you could play as John Madden, I thought, you know what? That's pretty cool. I haven't seen that before. That's the first time I saw it. So I thought it would be cool. And it actually ends up working pretty cool or pretty good. So John Madden will be our head coach. Obviously, we'll be in the John Madden playbooks because why wouldn't we be? I've never actually used them, I don't think. So this is the roster. Now, as like I said, we have a very good mix of people. We've got older guys, we've got more current guys, and our starting quarterback, at least for right now, that doesn't mean he's going to be a starting quarterback forever, is Terrell Pryor. Now, one important thing that I wanted to do or wanted to talk about with this, since we are using guys that are either out of the league or my age or older, is I had to change their birthdays. So they weren't all like 30 plus years old, 40 years old. And I'm not 30 years old. I'm just saying this version of Terrell Pryor is 26, which is how old I am. So I added 10 years to everybody's birthday. So let's say if you were born in 1987. If you were born in 1987, I added 10 years. Now you're born in 1997. I did make everybody a rookie, though. I considered making everybody have the exact years of experience that they had when they were done, or how long they played in the league. So, like, I think Terrell Pryor had like, or maybe it was somebody. One of these quarterbacks had like 8 years of experience. They played 8 years in the league. I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been Terrell Pryor. It could have been Vince Young or Tim Tebow. I can't remember exactly, but one of them had 8 years of experience, and I considered adding that and keeping that, but they were still rookies. But then I was like, you know what? That's a little too complicated. Some guys I have on this team are way older than that. Some guys play in the 90s, so that would be way more experience than I think the game allows. I think you're only allowed to put, when you're creating a player, to allow them to have 12 years of experience. So that wouldn't have made any sense anyway, so it wouldn't have worked. So I guess I'm glad that I didn't do that. But everybody is a rookie, technically, even though they're not rookie age. Some of these guys are late 20s. But I thought that would be the best scenario since might give them a chance to possibly develop. Everybody is a normal dev except for, like I said, the guys that are real. That like so there's Ezra Cleveland, I think you saw, had star dev. There might be one guy on the defense that has star dev. So and you can't give dev traits when you're creating guys in a roster, which I think is stupid. You should be able to give dev traits in that game or in that main roster screen as well. You shouldn't have to wait till franchise mode or till you get to franchise mode. But anyway, let's talk about Terrell Pryor. So I created this whole roster. So I made these ratings and everything. I feel like Terrell Pryor, if you ever watched Terrell Pryor, either in college at Ohio State or in the league when he first got drafted first got taken by the Raiders, he was in the supplemental draft. I think he was. He didn't even go in the actual draft back when they did a supplemental draft. They might still do one, but I don't know. But Terrell Pryor was unbelievably fast. Like one of the fastest players I've ever watched. Now, I say that, and then Braxton Miller shows up and becomes the greatest player I've ever watched. But I was a huge Terrell Pryor fan when he was leading the Buckeyes at Ohio State. And then Braxton Miller comes in and became my favorite player. Braxton Miller's unbelievable. Now Braxton Miller's not on this. Maybe he shows up eventually because he is technically a draft. But although he didn't get drafted like super high, he also got hurt. Hurt his shoulder, switched to wide receiver. That's kind of why he didn't get drafted. So maybe he doesn't show up. But anyway, we're not talking about that. Terrell Pryor was an unbelievable athlete. One of the craziest athletes I've ever personally watched. And if you know anything about Terrell Pryor, you know I think he still actually has the longest quarterback run in NFL history. He had like a 90, 92, 93, something in the 90-yard range of quarterback scrambles for a touchdown. Just go find the clip. Just search up Terrell Pryor scrambling Raiders scrambling touchdown. You should be able to find it. I think he did it in Miami against the Dolphins on the, or no, maybe he did it in Oakland on the baseball diamond, because they used to play on the A's diamond in the Coliseum before they got their own stadium, before they moved to Vegas, or technically before they moved to, where'd they go after they went to, did they go right to Vegas when they left Oakland, or no, they went back to LA, didn't they? They left Oakland and went to LA, then they went to Vegas. Is that what happened, or is that the Rams? Because the Rams went to, or they were in LA, they went to St. Louis, and then went back to LA. Chargers were in San Diego, then they went to LA. Did the Oakland go to LA too? I know they were obviously in Oakland in like LA in the 90s. But did they go to Oakland and then back to LA and then to Vegas? I can't remember exactly the timeline. But anyway, they played in the Coliseum, and that's, I think, when he did it, was on the A's Coliseum stadium, in the, because you can see like the dirt and stuff from the diamond. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is he's very fast. So I gave him really good speed, but I didn't really give him too much else. He's got not great accuracies. They're fine for a young guy. Well, 26. And he's got a big arm. He had a huge arm in college. I didn't want to give him like a 99 arm because that would have been a little bit crazy. But 92 I felt like was a reasonable spot to put his arm, because he did have a huge cannon. Like he could throw the ball 100 yards, it felt like. But he just wasn't the greatest accuracy. It wasn't no Tom Brady out there, and he's very athletic. So that is what Terrell Pryor's ratings look like. I also added Vince Young and Tim Tebow to this roster because Vince Young was drafted first round, thought to be the savior of the Tennessee Titans, and never really did anything. He had a couple of moments in his career. He was fine, but he wasn't ever lived up to what the Titans wanted him and what he did in college. He's one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time. Him and Tim Tebow are probably like right there. I'd personally say that Tim Tebow is the greatest college quarterback of all time, but you got to say that him, Vince Young, I'd probably argue that Baker's up there with the way that Baker's career ended. So Baker's definitely one of the more modern greatest college quarterbacks of all time. Cam Newton's definitely up there. Marcus Mariota certainly is one of the greatest. But Vince Young was phenomenal. He was so good at Texas, and when he got to the league, he wasn't that great. He was fine for a little bit, and then he kind of fell off and wasn't great. So Vince Young is our guy. He's fairly fast for a quarterback. He's got decent accuracies, not great throw power. He never had like the biggest arm in the world, but he had a good arm. He had a big arm. So I gave him 85 throw power, and I think that he could be a very good quarterback for us. He is 32, though. Because remember, he's older than Terrell Pryor, obviously. He came in the league in, 2007, 2008, whatever it was. So, or 2006 even? Whatever it was. So, he obviously had an older birthday, so I added 10 years. Now, some guys that were super old, I added 20 years, or around 20 years to their birthday, because I didn't want them to be like in their late 30s as a rookie. That wouldn't, because who knows if they were going to retire or not. So, I didn't go too crazy. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Most of that, it's on the defense, I think. But we've got rookie Vince Young at 32 years old as our backup quarterback, and none of these guys could be, like any of these guys could be the starter. Just because Terrell Pryor's list as the starter right now doesn't mean he's necessarily going to be the starter. He might end up being that way because the play style fits a little bit more of what I like to do, which is scramble. And I also forgot to mention, I did make sure that both Tim Tebow and Terrell Pryor were at least a little bit proficient at wide receiver, or in Tebow's case, I guess technically tight end. Because in their careers, they both switched to those positions and play a couple of games. Now, Tim Tebow didn't last very long as a tight end, that was a whole experiment. It was weird. You could actually go on the channel in the early days of this channel and see my thoughts on Tim Tebow being a wide or being a tight end because that was happening during that time that I was first like getting into YouTube and everything. It was like around 2020. So it was a weird time. So you can go back to the early portion of the channel and you can see my thoughts in the moment of what Tim Tebow was going to do at tight end. I think I made a whole video on it. So I did go through because Terrell Pryor actually has a 1,000-yard season, I think, or maybe really close on the Cleveland Browns. He might have got like 900 yards. He was very close to 1,000 yards one year as a Cleveland Brown wide receiver. So I did go through and give him and Tim Tebow fairly respectable wide receivers. Not Tim Tebow's a little bit worse, but obviously Pryor and Tebow have better wide receivers. So if in the future we want to add more quarterbacks to this roster that are busts, like a Johnny Manziel or a Jamarcus Russell, like I mentioned earlier, then we can move those guys to wide receiver and tight end, and then that opens up space without having to get rid of those guys in general. So I thought that'd be pretty fun. But speaking of, Tim Tebow is here. Tim Tebow's 28 years old. He is a rookie. And he's from Florida, obviously. One of the greatest, probably the greatest quarterback of all time in college football. But he never really had the thing. He was great. He had the heart. He had the soul. He had the grit and the grind and the determination, but he didn't have the actual throwing skill to get the job done. So now maybe I was a little bit too generous on his accuracies. Maybe they should have been in the mid to low 70s, but I didn't want to go too crazy. I mean, you can see his overall is a 71. He's not the greatest player of all time, obviously. But I thought it would be cool to add Tim Tebow on this roster because he was like, what, he was a top 15 pick, I think, at the very least, by the Denver Broncos. He does own an overtime playoff victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, by the way, watching that AFC Championship game, Patriots-Broncos, Patriots won, going to the Super Bowl, baby. That's not the video. The last they brought up a stat. The last time the Broncos, because there was like a thought maybe the Broncos go to overtime in this game. The last time the Broncos had won an overtime playoff game, it was that Tim Tebow overtime throw to Demaryius Thomas on the first play of overtime where he takes it to the house. Demaryius Thomas does. So that was the last. That kind of like shocked me. I was like, what? That's the last time they won an overtime playoff game? But it is. So here is Tim Tebow, and let me know what you think of the ratings. Do you think that they're too generous? I can go in and change these ratings if you think that they're a little bit too generous. Maybe they should be a little bit worse, because at the end of the day, these guys are busts. They didn't play very well, but also at the beginning of their careers, I didn't mean to back out there. At the beginning of their careers, they were at least favored a little bit. So I thought that I could do a nice little mix of that. At running back, we have LaMichael James, Trent Richardson, Monty Ball, and Eddie Lacy. You can't see Eddie Lacy on here, but Eddie Lacy is here. Now, the only reason that LaMichael James is an 80 overall and not kind of a similar rating to what the rest of the guys are is because of his speed. Madden rates speed so highly in these games that even if you have low carrying or low ball carry vision, his ball carry vision has a 70, but because his speed is a 98 and his acceleration is a 98, his rating is an 80 because they value speed so highly. So that's legitimate. You could look at these ratings. That is legitimately the only reason he's an 80 overall. If he didn't have this kind of speed, he'd be a 70 or a 71 or something like that. So that is legitimately the only reason. But I had to put these ratings as highly as they are for his speed and acceleration, because if you've ever watched LaMichael James, you know LaMichael James is a freak. Or at least he was. LaMichael James is unbelievably fast. He was unbelievably fast at Oregon. He was spectacular, but that was really all he could do. He had a little bit of a running back, a little bit of a kick return style guy, but he just never really did anything at the running back level. And I think he was the all-time leading rusher at Oregon at one point. But I'm sure somebody passed him by now, but I'm pretty sure he was at least at one point the all-time leading rusher at Oregon history. But he was so fast. So I gave him really good speed, but that is pretty much all he has at this point. So that's kind of why he's a higher overall. But then we go to Trent Richardson. And Trent Richardson is an infamous one. I had to put him on here. He played for the Raiders, so it fit. And also, I mean, he's one of the most famous busts of modern time, and I had to put him on here. If I wasn't going to put Jamarcus Russell on here, I had to give you at least Trent Richardson, because his story is so weird because he was pretty good at Alabama. Like he was really good at Alabama, and then he just like I don't know if it was work rate or what it was, but he never could get the job done. He just couldn't do it for some reason. Whatever the circumstances may have been, he just never got the job done. He could never really pick it up, which is really weird. So he's nothing special. He's got 84 speed, which for a running back is not great. He's got middle of the road stats pretty much everywhere. He's not a great route runner and pass catcher because that's never really been his thing. He's just kind of a guy. And that's kind of what a lot of these guys are at the end of the day, just kind of guys. I mean, they were good enough to make it to the league, but when they got there, they were not good. And then we've got Monty Ball. And Monty Ball, if you know anything about college football, you know Monty Ball was the real deal. Monty Ball was him in college. He kind of started the Wisconsin run of like legitimately world beater running backs. Now, obviously, they had other guys in the past, but Wisconsin went on this run of running backs where they had Monty Ball, they had Melvin Gordon, they had Jonathan Taylor, and all of these guys that were some of the greatest running backs college has ever seen. I mean, Melvin Gordon was breaking records like crazy. Jonathan Taylor was a phenomenal running back, but Monty Ball was kind of like the first of that era, that cycle of running backs that Wisconsin was putting together. Back in the day, back in like the 2010s, Wisconsin was known for two things: recruiting unbelievable offensive linemen and recruiting unbelievable running backs. That was their thing. That was their identity back in the day. Now they did have guys like J.J. Watt and Russell Wilson ended up transferring over there, and they won some games other ways. But Wisconsin was known for offensive linemen and running backs, and Monty Ball was kind of like the beginning of this like cycle of guys. He was so good. I thought he was going to be unreal when he got to the league. But he just never really could put it together. Just kind of the same thing with Trent Richardson. He never got it together. So, and I don't really see a lot of people talk about Monty Ball as a draft bust. So I wanted to include him on there to give him his props, even though you don't really want to be associated with this kind of list. And then we had to go to the depth chart to see Eddie Lacy because he's not on here. But Eddie Lacy, oh no, Eddie Lacy's in the practice squad. My bad. I had to put Eddie Lacy on did I put him on the practice squad? He should be here. Yeah, here he is. Eddie Lacy on the practice squad. So I'll go to the practice squad to show you. I had too many guys, so I had to put Eddie Lacy on the practice squad. But here he is. Eddie Lacy, 25 years old. Madden's player models are not great. They don't really give you a lot of creativity in terms of different body types. I mean, NFL players have all kinds of different body types. There's guys that are really big, but also like all that is muscle. And now, and I'm not saying that's Eddie Lacy. I'm just saying the body types they gave you more options, but the ones that they give you aren't great. Like this is the heavy version, and some guys are different builds, and like everybody's different, obviously. And Eddie Lacy is famous for putting on a lot of weight, basically. And this is no joke. His weight, 5'11", 280, when I went to Wikipedia and Football Reference and all that kind of stuff, his weight was 280 when he was playing at the end of it, at least at the end. So that's not like a joke. I didn't do that for the memes to make him heavier than what he could have been. No, he was at legitimately 280 at the end of his career. So I put him at a heavy build and made him 5'11", 280 because I thought that would be the most accurate. And Eddie Lacy, man, had a run at Alabama. He was cool. He was great at Alabama. But then he ate too many Big Macs, and he got heavy, and he got careless, and he lost interest in the game. At least that's what it looked like. I don't know if you ask him what the true thing is, but he never could put it together in the Packers, and then he went to... Did he play for the Raiders too? Did Eddie Lacy play for the Raiders? I feel like I have a vision of him playing for the Raiders, but maybe not. Maybe it's just because I'm seeing it now. Maybe he did, though. I can't remember exactly. But he's not great. That's why he's on the practice squad, and we had 3 running backs, and he's probably never going to get usage. But those are my running backs. At wide receiver, this is an interesting mix. I gave ourselves Josh Gordon because Josh Gordon had all the potential in the world to be the best wide receiver in football. And it looked like he was going to get there. But between suspensions, he couldn't stay off the weed, and also kind of personal things happened to him, personality things, where he He didn't get along with anybody like in the league, not team wise, but it like player wise. But like he couldn't get along with anybody up high in the thing, and just he couldn't stay on the field because he was always suspended. So, and that was back when NFL had a little bit more of a strict drug policy where they ban you for all kinds of drugs. Now I think it's a little bit more lenient. Like I think you can do a little bit of weed every once in a while as long as it's not like during a drug test. But players have gotten around it a little bit more. But then they've learned from Josh Gordon because Josh Gordon they almost made him like an example. Josh Gordon, I feel bad for him because he had such a good run, but then it stopped because he just couldn't stay on the field because he couldn't stay out of trouble. Whether it was one thing or another. He even played for the Patriots. If you remember that, he had like one game, or that maybe that was Antonio Brown, but he had like a run with the Patriots and Tom Brady that was like a fever dream. It was really weird. I think he was even on that team with Antonio Brown. That whole Patriot team was weird. Edelman and Gordon and Antonio Brown on the same, and Gronkowski in the same receiver room. Very weird. But Josh Gordon was a fun player. I like Josh Gordon. I always thought he was going to be a great player, but he just couldn't stay out of trouble, couldn't stay not suspended. So these are his ratings. He's an 82 overall. I mean, he was a good player, so I had to give him a little bit of a higher overall than normal. Then we've got Charles Rogers. And Charles Rogers is an infamous one because Charles Rogers, which, if I'm not mistaken, he's passed away. Hold on. I don't want to get that wrong. Is Charles Rogers passed away? Charles Rogers, did you pass away, my guy? I feel like you did you not? Yes, you did. He passed away in 2019, and it was due to liver failure. He had been diagnosed with cancer and needed a liver transplant, but unfortunately he could not get it. Kind of same thing to Nick Mangold in recent, like the or late last year. He has passed away. So RIP Charles Rogers, but I put him on here for his NFL history because he was like the number 2 overall pick in the draft and didn't make it. He didn't live up to the number 2 pick, so that gives him the title of bust. But I gave him an 81 overall because he was still, I mean, he was the number 2 overall pick, so he was good enough to be that highly drafted. But when he got there, he put up okay season, but he never lived up to what the number 2 pick was. He's widely considered one of the biggest draft busts in the modern era because of being drafted at like number 2 overall and never doing anything. So that's why he's on this list, even though he has passed away, unfortunately. But he's on here, and he's an 81 overall, and he could be good for us. You never know. We also have Justin Blackmon, and he's one of the more infamous ones because Justin Blackmon, even though it says he didn't go to college, I put him at Oklahoma State. I don't know why I didn't say he. Hold on, now I got to change that because that's going to annoy me. Sometimes with the creation in this game, it's very finicky. It doesn't save all the time. Like I had to be very, very slow in my process. It took me a lot longer than it should have. Whoops, because the game will like tell you that you have selected a number or selected the name that you want, but then when you save it and go out, it's like it just says your name and what like it's very stupid. The game is bad. But anyway, so now it says Oklahoma State. Perfect. I wanted to have Justin Blackmon on here because Justin Blackmon is like one of the first of my generation of watching players go to college and then get drafted and then not living up to the hype. Justin Blackmon's like one of the first guys that I can remember where he came out of college out of Oklahoma State, and I thought this guy's going to be the new guy. Now, obviously, I was young at this time. It was what, like 2013 or something like that. So I was like 12, 13 years old. So I was still young into my learning about how players perform and what it takes to actually be good in the league. And Justin Blackmon was like one of those first guys. I think I even had like a Justin Blackmon rookie card back in the day. Like Justin Blackmon was one of those guys that I thought was going to be great. Now, maybe that's a combination of him just not actually having that good of talent in the league, not being able to get done, or the situation that he went to. He got drafted by the Jaguars, and at that time, the Jaguars were not very good. There's a reason they were picking that highly, and they never really could figure out any draft picks, really. It takes a special kind of guy to get drafted to a team like that and end up working out. And it also helps when you're not a receiver, because when you're a receiver, it's different because you have to rely on a quarterback and an offense to actually get you the ball to produce. So that's why wide receivers a weird position to rate as a draft bust because you're relying on other people. Quarterback's very easy. Either you're good at the position or you just can't do it. But running back, same deal. There's certain positions that you know some guys are just bad, or other positions like corner. Corner's a weird one because you have to rely on the ball getting thrown your direction to the guy that you're covering to actually prove that you're a decent player. Now, for some people, that ends up being a bad thing because quarterbacks figure out that you're actually not very good, and then they throw to you a lot, and that exposes you. So that's a different thing. But wide receiver, like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson's one of the best in the league, but he has J.J. McCarthy as his quarterback. So he's not going to put up the numbers that he should because J.J. McCarthy's not good. He's had a rotating quarterback room, but Justin Jefferson, we know the talent that is there with Justin Jefferson. And Justin Blackmon getting drafted to the Jaguars kind of sucks because maybe he didn't have the talent, but he also didn't have a great system around it. I think that might have been the time that Blaine Gabbert was there, and we know that Blaine Gabbert's not a starting quarterback in this league. I think Blaine Gabbert actually is still in the league. He might be like on the 49ers or something, but he's not a quarterback in this league. And so Justin Blackmon had a bunch of stuff go against him. He also I think he had a little bit of personality issues where he was kind of angry and never really could get along with anybody. But he's on this list because he's a big time draft bust. I also have John Ross, and I will speed this up a little bit. I have John Ross and Kevin White. And these two guys are like synonymous with one thing. They were really fast. John Ross even broke set the combine 40-yard dash time. I think he ran a 4.2 at the combine in the 40-yard dash, which is just unbelievably fast. I gave him 99 speed, 99 excel, but that is all he can do. He can't really catch. He can't really run routes. All he's got is his speed. So, and that's again why he's an 81 overall, because all he's got is his speed. But John Ross and Kevin White are in a similar boat. Now, Kevin White doesn't have that kind of speed. I think he got like 96 maybe or something, and it took away his West Virginia for some reason. I hate this game. I really do. But anyway, these two guys are very synonymous with being draft bust because they were drafted really, really highly because you thought, oh, they're going to put this together. They've got the speed. They've got that physical capabilities, but they just couldn't. They can't either. They can't run routes. They can't catch the football very consistently or anything. But Kevin White and John Ross are on this team. Yeah, 96, 95 for Kevin White. And other receivers that I have on this list or on this team, maybe in the practice squad, I've got Kelvin Benjamin is a very famous draft bust because he was on that Jameis Winston Florida State national championship team, the final national championship team before they switched to the college football playoff, by the way, which the Buckeyes won the first. Not just saying. Anyway, Kelvin Benjamin was so good in college. Jameis Winston and him was a great 1-2 punch. They were a great duo. But then Kelvin Benjamin got to the league and didn't put it together, got a little bit heavy, put on a little bit of weight, and just couldn't perform at the wide receiver level or at the position and fell out of the league. Now, this kind of is one of the more prominent reasons why I wanted to bring up the fact that the Madden draft or the Madden player builds are not great is because I made Kelvin Benjamin 6'5", 245 because that's what he was weighing at the time. But when you look at his player model, that doesn't look like the Kelvin Benjamin 245. Like, players put on weight differently. The way that weight looks on people, on human beings in general, is different because everybody's different. So Kelvin Benjamin's 245 was more of a belly, but this 245 is all muscle, and I can't control that because that's just the way that the player models work. And I wasn't going to make him a heavy build because that would look stupid because he still had muscle, but he just had a little bit more of a belly. And you can't get that specific when you're creating players in the game. So he looks like a god. He looks like a god. He looks like he's sculpted from stone. But that's not really what Kelvin Benjamin looked like in his career. For the most part, he was sculpted, but he was always a bigger guy. He was always a more thick guy, even in college. And so you can't really do that in the game. But Kelvin Benjamin is here. He's on the practice squad. He might get some playing time. You never know if we move him up. But I will move through this a little bit faster. On the offensive line, we've got Luke Joeckel, and I backed out again. I keep pressing the wrong button. We've got Luke Joeckel and Alex Leatherwood. Alex Leatherwood I had to put on here because Alex Leatherwood is one of the most famous offensive line draft busts in the past 15 years, I'd have to say. He was he was not good really in college, and yet the Raiders took him in the first round. I think it was like late first round they took him, and everybody clowned the pick. Like everybody knew that he wasn't good, and yet they still took him in the first round. Like there's a reason he fell out of the almost out of the first round. But then the Raiders, I don't know. This was like the John Gruden. Uh, what's the analyst guy's name? Why am I forgetting on his name? He's an older guy. Oh, what is his name? I can't think of it. I'm blanking on it right now. He's like a draft guy, but then he became like a front office guy when he joined the Raiders with John Gruden and all that kind of stuff. I can't think of his name right now. I'm blanking on it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But that was like during that era where the Raiders were like a huge dumpster fire, and well, they might still be. But Alex Leatherwood was not a first round pick, and yet they took him in the first round for some reason. Now Luke Jokel was like was he number one overall? Yeah, he was because that was Luke Jokel and Eric Fisher was the draft. That 2013 draft was him first to the Jaguars and then Eric Fisher to the Chiefs, which was super weird. That two off. I mean that just goes to show you how bad that 2013 draft was. That offensive linemen are going to go 1 and 2 in the draft, which I don't think will ever happen again. Even in a bad quarterback draft, I don't think there'll ever be an offensive lineman go number one overall again. But Luke Jokel, he was a fine guy, but he was a first overall pick. It's not his fault. You can't really even at offense. You'd have to be Orlando Pace or Quentin Nelson. You'd have to be the greatest offensive line of your generation to live up to that hype, and that's not fair to him. But he does get that rep that he's a draft bust. Now we have Ezra Cleveland, who, to be fair to him, is still in the league, but he was drafted highly and has never really lived up to that as well. We've got Evan Neal, who Giants fans would say is the biggest draft bust of all time. I mean, Evan Neal was thought to be one of the better Alabama offensive linemen, and then wasn't great. So then we also got Jackson Carman, who was drafted in the first round. We've got Connor Williams at center. Center was hard to find guys that were draft busts. Connor Williams and John Michael Schmitz. I'm not trying to pick on the Giants. Just they haven't drafted offensive linemen very well. And John Michael Schmitz, it's a little bit harsh to put him on this list because he's still young and has a chance. And I think he had a pretty solid year this year. So I only put him on here because I needed more centers and I couldn't find any more. And John Michael Schmitz fits that at least right now. Hopefully, for his sake, in the future, he can turn it around and actually put together a solid career where he doesn't. You don't think of him as a draft bust when you think of him, but as of right now, I would put him on the list because he hasn't done it yet, and that's where we're in the now. We're not in the then. We're in the now. So when will then be now? Now. John Michael Schmitz is on this team. Isaiah Wynn, that one hurts me because the Patriots drafted him and he sucked. DJ Fluker's on this list. Greg Robinson, Trevor Penning is on this list. Cody Ford is on this list. Some of these guys, like I said, are still playing in the league, and maybe they can turn it around, but as of right now, they are going to be considered draft busts. At tight end, we've got Jermaine Gresham, OJ Howard, and David LaFleur. Now, David LaFleur is an older guy. David LaFleur is from the late 90s, early 2000s, so when I had to change his birthday, I think he was one of the guys that I added like 20 years or 15 years to make him not 50 years old or 45 years old, whatever he might be. But David LaFleur is on here. He's a big guy, 6'7" is crazy, 272. He could be for something for us. Jermaine Gresham and OJ Howard are weird ones. OJ Howard, I was such a big OJ. Why was I? I just shows you how bad of a draft evaluator I was when I was a kid, because I was a big OJ Howard fan. I also I think I had a player or a trading card of him as well. But I was a big OJ Howard fan. I thought he was going to be great when he got to the league, and he was fine. I mean, he won a Super Bowl. Wasn't he on that Tampa Bay team that won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady? So I mean, he's got a Super Bowl, I'm pretty sure. But he wasn't fantastic. I think he's retired now. So sucks for him. And then we go to the defense, and this is what we have. Now, I don't want you to scream. Jeremy Chinn is on this list. Jeremy Chinn, I think, is a good NFL player, but he was first round pick. He's bounced around a little bit, and I don't think he's lived up to it. So, and this is this can be a subjective list. A lot of it is like based on facts. Like some of these guys are just obvious busts, like a a Vince Young or a Josh Gordon or a, well, maybe not Josh Gordon because he didn't get technically drafted that highly. But like a John Ross or a Kevin White, those guys are clearly draft. Like you can't argue with that. Those guys are draft busts, and like an Alex Leatherwood. But Jeremy Chin and a guy like Ryan Shazier, some of these guys had different things that caused their careers to not go very well. But like Vernon Golston is a clear draft bust. But Jeremy Chin is, some could consider him a draft bust. Other guys might just consider him a fine player. He's a middle of the road player. But I put him on this list because not only was he already on the Raiders, I didn't have to move him. Also, I thought he would fit this list. It's my personal opinion. But then we go to the defensive line. We've got Aldon Smith, which I love Aldon Smith, man. I know that he has had a rocky career and a rocky life. I think he didn't at one point he call in a bomb threat at an airport or something. There was something weird with Aldon Smith going on. I'm pretty sure. Hold on, now I gotta see because I don't want to throw out misinformation. I'm pretty sure he had something to do with a bomb at an airport. Alden, oops, Aldon Smith bomb. If I just type in Alden Smith bomb, did that not happen? Hold on, let me show you here. So yeah, Alden Smith arrested at the airport for what? I just had a stroke there. Alden Smith was charged with a false bomb report. I remember something about that. This happened in 2014, by the way. Los Angeles police arrested linebacker defensive end Alden Smith at an LA airport on Sunday. He's indicted with possession of a bomb, or after he indicated that he was in possession of a bomb. He's booked, charged with a false bomb report. I thought I heard that. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I didn't technically throw out misinformation. I knew there was something with Alden Smith and a bomb. I just couldn't remember exactly what it was. But Alden Smith's on here because he was so good. Alden Smith was the next coming of like a great edge rusher, but then he just either it was injuries or off the field personal issues. He just couldn't stay on the field. He couldn't put it all together, and he got out of the league. So Alden Smith is on this list. We also have Tyree Wilson on this list. Funny that a lot of Raiders are on this this list. Shows you that the Raiders just can't draft. But Tyree Wilson was a top pick in the draft, and he shouldn't have been. He didn't have that kind of skill set. He just never should have been a top pick like he was. And it's not his fault. The Raiders just thought he was better than he was, and took him higher than he should have been. Maybe if he was a second round pick, he'd be considered a pretty good player. But first round pick, unfortunately, in the way that he was like top 3, I think, or top 5 at least. He's not very good. Albert Haynesworth is an interesting one because you might be thinking, Juice, Albert Haynesworth's not a draft bust, but the way that his career, the reason he's on here is because the way that his career went, he was drafted highly. He put on a pretty solid career with Washington and with Tennessee, but he had personal issues. He was not easy to get along with. He also had anger issues. He stomped on a guy in a game, kind of like Ndamukong Suh style. He wasn't as good as he should have been. Basically, is that's kind of like the overall statement of this whole series. They weren't as good as they should have been. Is kind of like the whole. It's like that's like the theme. That's the thematic statement of this series. They weren't as good as they should have been. And that's basically what you can say about Albert Haynesworth. So he's on this list. He's the highest rated player on this list or on this team because he was a good player. He wasn't as good as he should have been. We also have Robert Nkemdiche, and I have to say it like that. Robert Nkemdiche, and he's on this list because he was a freak at Ole Miss, but he wasn't anything in the league. We've also got Solomon Thomas, a first round pick that has had a fine career, but has never been lived up to the billing. Vernon Golston, one of the most infamous first round picks of all time. He's on this list. He was a Buckeye, hurts my heart. Same thing with Terrell Pryor. And then Courtney Brown. I had to include Courtney Brown on this list. Courtney Brown, if you don't know, which again, it took away his college. I hate this game so much. I got to look it up now because I don't remember off the top of my head where he went to college. Courtney Brown, if you're not familiar, was Penn State. That's right. He was the first overall pick in 19 or 2000. Wait, what was it? 2000 something? 2000, exactly 2000. He was the first overall pick in 2000 by the Cleveland Browns, obviously, and he sucked. when he got to the league. He absolutely sucked. And Courtney Brown, I had to put on this list. There's not many defensive first round pick or first overall picks that I could include on this draft bust list. I had to put him on this list. So Courtney Brown is here. We also have guys like Andy Katzenmoyer, the big cat, who's on this list. He was maybe one of the best college linebackers of all time and could not do the same thing in the NFL, which is unfortunate because I love Big Cat. He's a great player. Just look up Andy Katzenmoyer. You'll find the picture when he's at Ohio State where he's the camera got him where he's in his linebacker stance, but he's got the visor on, and it's one of those visors that's like very reflective, so it shows what he's seen in the reflection of his visor. It's one of the greatest pictures of all time. If I can put it up on the screen, I'll put it up. But it's one of the greatest pictures of all time. It's a legendary picture. Brian Bosworth, the Boz, man, he's got a story. I'm sure everybody knows about Brian Bosworth. He's got himself quite the story. I had to put him on here, not necessarily for his draft bust status, but because he's such an infamous, somewhat failed player, that he was such a crazy player in college that he just didn't get in the league. That's kind of why he's on here. Ryan Shazier is probably the one that you might argue along with Jeremy Chinn that shouldn't be on here. I wouldn't necessarily personally consider Ryan Shazier a bust because he was a great player for what, like 5 years that he was in the league. But then he has that unfortunate injury in the game against Cincinnati where he tackle, who's he tackling? Is he tackling, I can't remember who he's tackling. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But whoever he's tackling in that game, he hits them and then it like compresses his spine and his neck and he can't move. And then his career's over at that point. So, and there's like good news now. He's like able to walk and actually like live a somewhat comfortable life now, which is a good thing because an injury like that, I mean, could have paralyzed you. You could have killed you. And thankfully that Ryan Shazier didn't die from that. But Ryan Shazier up until that point was like one of the best players on the Steelers at that point. But I put him on here because not because of his draft status and being technically a bust, but because his career got cut short and we never got to see how his career could end. So I kind of wanted to give him that chance to come back into the league on this team and finish out what it could have been and actually give him a decent career and not hopefully get hurt. Well, injuries are off, so he can't get hurt. But I wanted to redo his career and change history so that he doesn't actually get hurt and almost become paralyzed and all that kind of stuff. So that's why he's on this list. So I know he's not technically a draft bust, but for injury reasons, he makes it he's more reasonable to be on this list basically. We also have Keith Rivers, we have Manti Te'o, we have Devin White on this list at linebacker, guys that were good players in college but never could do anything in the league. At corner, we've got some famous ones. We've got Dee Milliner, drafted by the Jets, highly. We've got Justin Gilbert, drafted by the Browns, highly. Vernon Hargreaves, a lot of people thought Vernon Hargreaves was the next guy at corner, the next lockdown, number one corner in the league, but he didn't do it. He couldn't do it. And then it hurts my heart, but there have been a lot of Ohio State corners in recent memory that have not panned out, which is really weird because Ohio State corners at college are some of the best corners in the country. Like, there's a reason they call it Lockdown University. They call it BIA. It's a no-fly zone. Like, the corners at Ohio State are always unbelievably good, but then when they get to the league, not always are they that great. I mean, Denzel Ward's been great, and Denzel Burke's had a couple of moments this past year, but Eli Apple, man, I mean, they call him burnt toast because he can't cover anybody. It's so weird. He was not like that in college. At least not, it wasn't as exposed. Maybe he had a lot of help covering it up, but it's so weird with Eli Apple because he can't cover a single person. He's burnt. That's his name. His nickname is literally burnt toast. He can't do anything. It's so strange. And then probably the most strange one of all is Jeff Okudah. Like, Jeff Okudah was drafted so highly by the Lions, and for some reason he just didn't take to the league. I don't know what it was, but this one still shocks me. Like, to this day, I'm so shocked that Jeff Okuda never made it. He had all the tools. He had the size. He had the skill. Like you thought he had the skill. He was so good in college. You thought that he had the skill at the next level, and for a little bit there was moments where it looked like he did. He was going to actually be a work like he was actually going to work out and be a good player. But just I don't know. This one's so weird to me. Like I can't even put it in like you can't process in my brain why he never worked out. It's so weird. Now he's still in the league. Maybe he'll turn it around and have a good end of his career. That's always possible. But as of right now, he just it's really weird. And then the other safeties we have Calvin Pryor and Lonnie Johnson Jr. Safety was another one that was pretty hard to find. We have Lewis Seen as well. Mostly when I went through this list creating the team, I basically just picked guys that were highly drafted, mostly first round picks. There's a couple second round picks maybe that are on here, but mostly first round picks that didn't actually do much in the league. That's kind of the criteria that I had for this list. And then obviously there's other guys like Albert Haynesworth, Ryan Shazier, Alden Smith, guys like that make the list or make the team that for other reasons. And then special teams, this was hard because there's only been a few special teamers drafted as highly as they can to be considered draft busts. Now, Roberto Aguayo is the exception. Roberto Aguayo, also on that Florida State national championship team, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was. But Roberto Aguayo, I think, was drafted in the first round. Was he not drafted in the first round? I'm pretty sure he was. By the Buccaneers? Roberto Aguayo. Were you... Hold on. Roberto... Was this man in the first round? I'm pretty sure he was. No, second round. Okay. Second round, 59th overall. But that's like the highest a kicker will ever go ever. And for some reason, the Bucks took him in the second round because they thought that he was going to be a generational kicker. Kickers don't go in the second round. Kickers go in the fourth round or the fifth round or the seventh round, or they go undrafted. That's what kickers do. And yet the Bucks took him in the second round, and he had some moments. He made some cool kicks, but he never was. I mean, it's not his fault. I mean, you get drafted in the second round as a kicker, you got to be an Adam Vinatieri. You got to be the greatest kicker of all time if you're going to be drafted that highly. So it's not necessarily his fault. He might have never been as good. He might have been out of the league already if he was drafted in the seventh round. So it's not his fault. It's the Bucks' fault for taking him so highly. But he couldn't live it. That's such a high task. It's such a high, such a big burden on him to be drafted that highly and to try to live up to that. So I gave him 94 kick power because he had a big leg in college. I gave him 94 kick power, but 76 accuracy. I didn't think he was that accurate. He might have been accurate in college. I can change this if you think he should be more accurate than what he is. But I didn't want to make him like a 90 overall kicker because he wasn't. And the ratings would have, if I would have made him like in the high 80s for a kicker, he would have been like a 90 overall or high 80 overall at the very least. So Roberto Aguayo was an obvious choice at kicker. But then when it got to punter, I don't think there was any punters that were drafted that highly, except for this guy right here. You might not be familiar with him. I wasn't familiar with him. Russell Rexelman, I think is how you say it. Russell, I'm not actually sure how you say it. But this man was drafted, let me pull it up. This man was drafted in the first round of the 1979 draft, pick number 11 by the New Orleans Saints. Yeah, a punter in the first round of the NFL draft. Now, obviously, it's a different time in the 1970s. But he was also a kicker and he was a kicker and a punter. But he is still, it says it right here. I'll show you. He is still the highest drafted punter of all time. And he's behind, although Ray Guy would be the highest drafted punter, but I don't think Ray Guy got drafted, is the thing that they're saying right there. And he's the second highest drafted kicker behind Charlie Gugulak. So, yeah, basically, he was thought to be the next Ray Guy, and yet he just didn't do it. Drafted first round as a punter? A first round as a punter? That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So, Russell Rexelman is here. Now, because it's me, we're probably not going to use him very much because I don't really punt the ball that much, but maybe I will because we don't have a great team around us. But this is the team, and I'll show you the practice squad because there are some important pieces on this team. So on the practice squad, we have not all these guys are busts. It's just filled the practice squad with other players. But the guys that I made and added on here are Eddie Lacy, Kelvin Benjamin, Isaiah Wilson, Titans draft pick in the first round that could not even play. Like what? He was the worst pick I've ever seen in my life. So he's on here. Kevin White, which hurts me as a Patriot fan. He wasn't drafted first round. He was like a second round pick or something like that. But he should have been better than what he was. Dominic Easy, also a Patriot pick. Rolando McClain and Damon Arnett. Those are the guys that I personally added as draft busts. The rest of these guys don't count as draft busts because they just got filled by the CPU on the practice squad. But the guys that I mentioned that I named are guys that I added as draft busts. Those guys can come up. So that is the team. And I know this was an hour of just me yapping, but that's what I wanted this video to be. I wanted this video to be explaining my process on picking the players and going through the team and all that kind of stuff. That's what I wanted for this first video. Now, next episode will be all about the first half of the year, going through it and seeing how these guys perform. We'll probably play a few games. I don't know if we'll jump into every game, but we'll probably jump in and play the moments for a few games, basically so we can see the guys on the field, obviously, and see how they perform, see what we're working with, and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know down below in the comments if you have any suggestions on maybe adjusting some ratings for a few guys. I showed you a lot of the ratings for a lot of the important players. So if you think that somebody should be a higher overall or a lower, most likely a lower overall, or maybe you think that somebody's ratings are a little bit off, maybe you think that their ratings should be lower, or this certain rating is not right, maybe that I should change that. So let me know down below what you think, and let me know who you think should start. Who should be our quarterback? Should Terrell Pryor be our quarterback? Vince Young, Tim Tebow? Where should we go at receiver? Should we move guys around the depth chart? Let me know what you think about this, and thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I truly appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.